Well, it was a rough night for New York teams. And apparently, you can beat the Yankees by keeping the ball in the ballpark and getting to their bullpen. And you can beat the Mets, apparently, by playing them.
You are Locked On MLB, your daily MLB podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, baseball. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. This is the daily podcast. We talk about all of Major League Baseball. I am your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully. Follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter or whatever they're calling it these days on Instagram. I'm your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. And the best way to get a hold of me is by going right here to the YouTube page and put that hashtag Everyday Sully. That way we can find your comments. I'm on something called Blue Sky about once every three decades, I guess. I don't know. I'm not there that often. Bet you, if you want to get a hold of me, YouTube page. I check it more often than I care to admit. But I can tell you right now that today's episode is brought to you by our good friends over at GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Now let's go to the trivia question because I want to bring up the Philadelphia Phillies and the fact that they were futile. Say that, the futile Philadelphia Phillies for a long, long time. I did a whole video about why were they the team to stay and not the A's, who had a lot more success in Philadelphia than the Phillies ever did. Check that video out somewhere. It's on this YouTube page somewhere. I have to scratch my nose right now. The trivia question was, who was president when the Phillies won their first ever postseason series? And this is a team that went way back into the 19th century. And they had several different names along the year. So who was president when they finally won a postseason series? And my dear friend Marcel, a.k.a. Cubs fan with an 8, 1908. The trivia question was Jimmy Carter in 1980. That's right. It was the last year. It was when the negotiations for the Iranian hostages were going on. And if you saw the movie Argo, that was going on. Pretty good movie, Argo, if I remember. I saw it once, liked it. But yes, 1980, that was the first time they ever won a postseason series, and it was the 1980 National League Championship Series. Now, I've been asked before because I love watching old games on YouTube, and YouTube, I used to criticize MLB for not having a lot of their old games on YouTube. They're doing a phenomenal job. You can find great classic games. And if you want to watch some old baseball games from television broadcasts and see some great old baseball, watch the 1980 National League Championship Series, the whole damn series. And this was all the games were on AstroTurf. 3 of them were under a roof. It was, if you're expecting old school sort of 1940s or 50s, Ken Burns wiping the tear from his eyes, you're not going to get that. You're getting real 70s, 80s looking baseball. And I would argue it was the greatest postseason series ever played. And you can make a strong argument for that. The Astros and the Phillies, 2 teams who had never won a World Series, battling out huge superstars on both teams and great legacy players on both teams. And they were equally determined to win that. And if you want to just watch some old baseball, knockdown, drag out fight baseball, watch the old 1980 NLCS, and where the Phillies wound up edging the Houston Astros in 5 games. In fact, it was a best of 5 series. All right, well, the Phillies won again today, and they have extended their lead over the New York Metropolitans. They have a 10-game lead with about 2 weeks to play. That division is clinched. And by the way, I mentioned this before. I'll just say it again. Tip your hat to the Philadelphia Phillies, who got the news that they're not going to have Zach Wheeler for the rest of the year. And they lost their ace. And they have really, really put on the aft thrusters and showing they can play. And they just beat the tar out of the Mets. They beat them the other day. And today, Sanchez is on the mound. People could make the argument. A couple people took me to task calling Wheeler their ace. Sanchez is having a phenomenal season, and he won again today. Clay Holmes lost. It was 2-0 after one inning. It was a 4-1 game going into the sixth. It was not an old-fashioned beating, but Holmes only gave him 4 innings, and the bullpen for the Mets was just a disaster. It was a cataclysmic disaster. They got a home run from Juan Soto. Congratulations. Bader continues to get hits at will. Sanchez threw 6 nice innings, and then the bullpen, just did their job. And it was an 11-3 victory. And I could break down this, and I could break down that, and I can analyze this, and I can analyze that. But the Mets are just not playing very well. And there is right now they are still in a playoff spot. And they were helped by the fact that the San Francisco Giants lost. But the Giants have been red hot. Now they lost this afternoon, so the Giants couldn't gain ground on them. But Cincinnati picked up a game. The Reds and the Giants are only 2 games back of the Mets right now. 2 games. And instead of breaking down the pitching and the hitting and everything like that, telling me who got the OPS this and the WAR that, you kind of have to start to ask yourself, was the Mets' great run that they had last year a fluke? It was this close to not existing. Remember, they had to play that final play-in game where they had to play a doubleheader against the Braves in order to figure out which one of the 3 teams were going to be. 2 out of the 3 teams, the Mets, the Braves, and the Diamondbacks, all finished the season tied, which means go back and Mets lose one more game in May or one more game in June. They don't even make the playoffs last year. If Devin Williams doesn't let up that home run to Pete Alonso, no one remembers the Mets were in it last year. If Philadelphia wound up being able to hold their own and maybe let Wheeler pitch a little deeper into game 1, no one remembers them. But they did, and you got to give them credit. And I was dead wrong last year when I said the Mets should have sold. They had a terrific June, but I said they should sell. It's a seller's market. You're not going to do piddly-poo. I turned out to be wrong. They got to within 2 wins of the World Series. They did. They got to within 2 dang wins of the World Series last year. And by the middle of June this year, the Mets were, say it with me, folks, the best team in baseball. They had the best record in baseball, and Memorial Day was in their rearview mirror. In other words, they could say, we got about a month and a half to the trade deadline, and we're the best in the biz. Well, they're the 3rd worst in baseball since then. And you have to start to ask yourself, if you're a Met fan, was that a fluke? They had a phenomenal 162 game stretch. They did. It wasn't the right 162 game stretch. And with that in mind, Met fans have to look in the mirror and say, wait a minute, are we not the team that we thought we were? All right, let's hear from our good friends over at FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for a kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can just bet $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets across the app. Now, if you want to use FanDuel because it fits however you like to bet, then guess what? You're in luck. Player props, building a same-game parlay, or even jumping in line as the action unfolds. And it makes every game more exciting, whether you're watching your team or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. And it's quick and easy and the best way to play and give a little more energy to your Sunday. So if you're ready to play, download the FanDuel app right now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. Now, let me tell you something. Let's hear from our brand new friends over at Nutrafol. Now, I'm blessed My hair is still on my head. It's going gray. I'm letting it go gray. I'm not going to color my hair. It's still on top of my head, but it's starting to thin out a little bit. I'm starting to see maybe it's going to start to go away. And you've probably seen a million ads for hair growth products and thought, yeah, sure, like that actually works. There are so many products out there, and it's hard to know which ones are going to do anything. And that's why you got to give Nutrafol a really good look. It is the #1 dermatologist recommended hair growth supplement brand, and Nutrafol is trusted by 1.5 million people. And that's just a type. It's a supplement clinically tested and targets the root cause of thinning and shedding with a proactive approach. Now, look at this is a great way to take a good solid look at reversing the whole thinning process. And it's simple to add in your day. 4 pills with a meal, no prescription needed. It's easy. And you can feel good knowing that Nutrafol is NSF certified and backed by peer-reviewed studies. So see thicker, stronger hair with less shedding in just 3 to 6 months with Nutrafol. For a limited time, Nutrafol is offering Locked On MLB listeners $10 off your first month subscription and free shipping when you go to Nutrafol.com and enter the promo code LOCKEDONMLB. That's Nutrafol.com, promo code LOCKEDONMLB. I have no idea why I still have my hair. I look like my grandfather on my mother's side, and he had the whole Rogers Center thing, the retractable roof, and my hair is still on my head. Okay. The Mets were like at 30, they were at 32 and 37 going into June of last year. They were not off to a great start. And then they went on a great June, and I said it's a fluke. Sell your play, you sell. You can get more for your players. They didn't. They got to within 2 wins of the World Series. In fact, in that point, roughly about 70 games into the season, from that point, the Mets played a 162 game stretch from June of 2024 to June of 2025. 162 games stretched over those 2 years where they went 102 and 60. They had a 162 game stretch where they were a 102 win team. Unfortunately, it was the wrong 162 game stretch because it wasn't in one season. It was stretched out over 2. So for the final roughly 2/3 of last year and roughly the first third of this year, they were a pennant winner. They were one of the greatest Met teams of all time. And in that 102 and 60 game stretch, that's not including their playoff run, that got them to Game 6 of the NLCS against the eventual World Series champion Los Angeles Dodgers. I was there for Game 6 when the Dodgers clinched. The Mets were tough. The Mets were resilient. And then when they came to start this year, you had Pete Alonso playing like he was facing the Brewers bullpen every night. And Juan Soto got off to a clunky start, but he started to hit nonetheless. And they got good pitching. They got a great bullpen. And they looked like this was the year to make people shut up about 1986 and finally put it the third championship in Mets history. And since then, they have played Rockies level baseball. Since then, their starting pitchers can't go deep into the game, which means their bullpen is absolutely gassed, which means their lineup is gripping the bat too tight and trying to hit 5-run homers. And they're getting their teeth waxed. And I don't even know if that's an expression, but you would think that waxing your teeth would not be a good thing. If you take the first about 70 games of the season and how they played since they were the best team in baseball in June, they are 63 and 82. They have wrapped a 102 win season around a burrito of a losing year, 82 losses. That's a losing season. And Met fans have to start to wonder, and the Mets organization has to wonder, Which is the fluke? Was that a fluke that they went on a 102 and 60 game stretch? Or is the fluke the losing season where they're 63 and 82 right now in that, wrapped around it? Which is the real Mets? If they had lost one more game in May or one more game, one game in May and one game in June last year, they missed the playoffs altogether. This is a nondescript Mets team. But they had that great run in the middle. Which is the real Met team? Now, they could still make the playoffs. And we have seen instances like the 2019 Washington Nationals, like the 2021 Atlanta Braves, who both of those teams won the World Series. In 2022, the Phillies made it all the way to the World Series, as did the Arizona Diamondbacks in 2023. We've had a lot of weird National League pennant winners over the last bunch of years, and certainly since the COVID years, where you did have the Dodgers win in 2020 and last year, but sandwiched in between those are a lot of weird NL pennant winners. And you could see a scenario where they hold on, they make it there, they wound up beating, the Cubs or Los Angeles, because LA's pitching is, they've had a couple of near no hitters, but they've also had some real bullpen issues. The Dodgers are beatable. And then they wound up catching the Brewers with their pants down, and then they wind up facing off against Philadelphia. These are all things that could possibly happen. But what also could happen is the Reds could play 3 games better than the Mets the rest of the way. Or the Giants could play 3 games better than the Mets the rest of the way. And then they miss the playoffs altogether. That's a larger than zero chance of that happening. And maybe that's because they've been 2 different teams over the last 2 seasons. An elite 100-game winner and a team with a losing record. And it's the same team. So which one are they? Which one are they? And I'm going to make some Met fans angry, but that's just the truth, Ruth. Now, the Detroit Tigers, give them credit. They went right into Yankee Stadium with the Yankees on a roll, winning a series on the road in Houston, winning another series on the other day. The other series was in New York, right? Yeah, the Yankees won the series against Toronto. Very well played games that they won. There was a boneheaded game against Houston, and there was a slap it around game by Toronto, but they won those series. And so in comes the Tigers, not pitching Tarek Skubal. And the first game, which was a good game until the 7th or 8th inning where they let up 9 runs in one inning, was a disaster. They brought in it was the 7th inning, and Cruz, who had been very effective, just couldn't find the strike zone, and they just pummeled them. And then it became a parade of relievers who let up 9 runs. And then today was, again, a pretty well pitched game, Flaherty versus Carlos Rodon. But the bullpen, again, let up 9 runs. It's the first time I believe it's the first time in Yankee history that the Yankee bullpen gave up 9 runs in back-to-back games. And Camilo Doval, to the shock of no Giant fan, was awful, was absolutely dreadful. And he's been a disaster. And Giant fans are in the greatest I told you so moment in the history of baseball going on with the acquisition of Doval. And so the old formula is shown. This is how you beat the Yankees. You put the ball in play. Now they've basically benched Volpe at this point because what does he have to do to prove that he's not a major league shortstop? You put the ball in play. They'll make errors, wear out their rotation because the Yankee bullpen is ineffective right now. You can trust Bednar and nobody else. There's no one else in there. So if you're in a short series against the Yankees, and the Yankees are not catching the Blue Jays, I'm sorry. I mean, the Blue Jays lost today, but there's 15 games left, and the Blue Jays hold the tiebreaker. You have to sweep every series at this point and hope the Blue Jays do a nosedive. There's not enough time to be like, well, we didn't lose ground today. No. That's another day off the magic number for Toronto. So if they're in a best of 3 series, it's easy. You just keep taking pitches and fouling off pitches and get to the bullpen and you'll win. And you also have to make sure they hit the ball into the ground because, again, these 2 games, All the Yankee runs were on solo homers. That's all they know how to do. Judge hit the home run. Ballinger hit a home run. Wells hit a home run. They scored 3 runs, all on solo homers. I mean, the American League is so up in the air that of course the Yankees can win it. Of course they can. Of course they can have they could wind up playing Boston and winning a couple of games against Boston and then face a AL Central team and beat them and then face the Astros and they show they could beat the Astros and the Astros are very vulnerable. Or they can be 2 and out. Foul off pitches, get to the bullpen, put the ball in play, and in the end, that's kind of sort of how you beat the team. And the fact of the matter is, after all this, their bullpen is still complete garbage. I don't know what to tell you. Maybe you shouldn't have traded for Doval. There's nothing like going to a baseball game live, and I've been to a couple of different stadiums this year. I've been to AT&T Park in San Francisco this year. I've been to Dodger Stadium, and yes, I went to see an A's game in Sacramento. And no matter where you are, whether you're packed in Chavez Ravine in a playoff game last year or in a weird minor league environment in Sacramento, it's still amazing to see your team in person. But actually getting tickets, that's the tough parts. Queues, login screens, surprise fees. It kind of takes some of the fun out of it. That's why I use GameTime, the app that takes advantage and your needs as a fan and gives them back to you. GameTime is fast, easy, and backed by the GameTime guarantee. You'll always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best price. All fees are included, so the price you see is the price you pay. And you know what? It makes it so simple. I can see exactly the view from my seat, and fees are included. You know the total up front. No surprise fees. No, where is that? Oh, that's the extra little fee you have to pay. Nope. And you get the zone deals because I have where I like to sit. In Dodger Stadium, I like to sit in the second deck, a little bit along the first base line. But sometimes I like to sit along the third base line when I'm in San Francisco. And in Sacramento, I need to sit in the shade. So you get the zone deals. You pick the section, they get the best deal. It's faster, it's cheaper, it's less stressful than any other way I've bought tickets before. So what you got to do is download the GameTime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Swipe, tab, ticket, go! Download GameTime today. That's GameTime, and use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB. A few weeks ago, I did an episode about the Pirates, and I was calling them out when they traded to Brian Hayes to the Reds. And several people called me out saying, like, Brian Hayes has been a disappointment. What are they, what's the big deal about them trading a disappointing player? And in a vacuum, I understand that. But the fact of the matter is, and today's Pirates-Orioles game highlighted a huge problem I have with this team, that they aren't putting major leaguers on the roster, and they don't seem to be making any attempt to do so. And Brian Hayes is a major leaguer, whether you think he's a great major leaguer or not. He was basically just dumped for nothing. And what do they have major league way around here? You take a look at how they treat their players with his bottom of the barrel payroll they have. Last year, remember how they released Rowdy Tellez when he was just like 3 or 4 plate appearances short of a $200,000 bonus? And they just did it so they can save $200,000. Again, not that Rowdy Tellez is the second coming of Dave Parker, but you're going to send that message to other potential players to come to the Pirates. And you know what? They'll cut you to save $200,000. Today, this year, they wound up, designating Andrew Haney for assignment and cutting Isaiah Kiner-Falefa. Both of them were just shy of incentives. In other words, and not huge incentives, but just like, oh, let's be penny pinchers right now. Let's just cut a little bit here and cut a little bit there. And it just shows that they're a Mickey Mouse organization. And it shows to potential suitors that they're a Mickey Mouse organization. And it stinks because this is a team that it's now going to be a decade without a postseason appearance. And Pittsburgh fans are wonderful sports fans, but it's been a decade since they made the playoffs. And before that, it was 2 decades before they were able even sniffing a winning record. So since the advent of the wild card, in the last 30 years, 3 Pittsburgh teams have made the postseason. 3. Without sniffing the National League Championship Series. They got to within 1 swing of the National League Championship Series in 2013. But still, in that stretch, the only team not to play in the National League Championship Series are the Pittsburgh Pirates. And they've had a lot of time to do this. And what makes it even worse, and why I got really mad about it today, was they have Paul Skenes. And I've made this point. How many aces are there? There are 30 number 1 starters, but a number 1 starter is not an ace. How many aces are there in baseball? Do you put the ball in their glove, say, go out there and get me a win, and it makes a difference when you see it's their day to pitch? 5, 6? Crochet, I'll give you Max Fried. Freddie Peralta's pitching like one this year, so may I'll give him there. Terrence Scubo. I mean, who am I missing? You don't have Garrett Cole this year. Normally, I would say DeGrom, but he's been he's been up and down and also injury prone. I mean, how many more? Who am I missing on this? I mean, I'm sure there's someone. I'll put Yamamoto in there. Fine, sure, but I'm not going to put Robbie Ray in there. Other pitchers I'm not going to put because I don't think they're quite at that level of, oh my God, it's a difference maker. And the Pirates have one of them. This is someone who is, who lives in a van, but also has a Lamborghini. And today, he didn't pitch that long, but he lowered his, lowered his ERA to 1.92. In 53 career starts, he has a 1.94 ERA. He has struck out 203 batters in 178 innings this year while walking only 39. And of course, they lost the game because they don't have a major league team. And they're not trying. That's what makes me mad. They have to next year. If they want to show anything to Pirate fans, they have to put major leaguers on the field with him. I made this suggestion a few years ago, and I stand by this. I made the suggestion actually to the Angels, but I'm going to make this about Paul Skenes. Forget about we're going to save $200,000 here, $200,000 there. Your payroll is already at the bottom of the barrel, okay? By the time spring training rolls around every year, there's always a bunch of major leaguers who are unsigned. That's just the way it is. The Pirates have to go out like supermarket sweep just before the spring training begins and put a major leaguer at every position. A real major leaguer. And at least 2 other major leaguers in the rotation, at least 2 major leaguers in the bullpen. Because you have an ace. You are wasting an ace. Who's pitching like an ace, at least as much as aces are allowed to pitch these days. They're a phony organization unless they do something along those lines. And it stinks because the Pirates are a wonderful franchise with a terrific history. And Pittsburgh is a fantastic sports city. And they would go banana boats to see the Pirates go deep. But alas, they're not doing that because they have a team that would rather save $200,000 here or $200,000 there. When people talk about the teams like the Mets or the Dodgers ruining baseball, nuh-uh. The Pirates are. Put a team on the field. Your major league team, act like it. By the way, thanks so much for making Locked On your first. Locked On MLB, your first listen every day. Second listen, keep it right here for the all-night Locked On MLB game night. Every game, every night until a World Series champion is crowned, and it won't be the Pirates. Get local analysis on a national scale by MLB Game Night on the Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Hey, let's take a look at the trivia question. It is pirate-oriented. Who is the last Pittsburgh Pirate to drive in a postseason run? And bonus if you can tell me what game it was. Who was the last Pirate to drive in a run in the postseason? The answer may surprise you. Talking about the Mets having a great 162 games, just a wrong 162 games. The New York Yankees forgetting how to play baseball in 2 straight days, and the Pittsburgh Pirates are a joke. This has been Locked On MLB. I am your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Don't hate me, Pirate fans, and you can call me Sully.